Alright, it's a two video kind of day here because I just finished the Xbox podcast, which just appeared on the Xbox YouTube channel with little fanfare or promotion. Well, that was weird. It's a 22-minute sit down that is pretty heavily scripted between Matt Booty, Phil Spencer, and Sarah Bond, with Tina Amini hosting. And it's talking about all the rumors and Xbox's future policy. Easily, the strangest part of this was Phil Spencer confirms that there are 4 games that were former Xbox exclusives or Xbox ecosystem exclusives that are now coming to other platforms. Those platforms being PS5 and Nintendo Switch, almost assuredly. He's not going to name those games. He does not name the games through the entire podcast. He says he wants the studios or their partners to be able to reveal them, which I think was the original plan. And instead he just starts listing clues. 2 of these are community games. 2 of them are smaller games that aren't, really big console exclusives or whatever. The games are not Starfield and Indiana Jones. We know what the games are. The games are Sea of Thieves and Grounded as the community-driven live games that are just trying to expand their player base. And the smaller games are Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment. The other stipulation was that the games are a year old. And for the time being, it is leaving out the big guns. It seems really goofy at this point to just not name the games. Maybe they have some agreement with Nintendo, something was going to be revealed at a direct, and now they don't want to do that. But then if that was the case, why did they do this at all? But they kind of had to because of all the rumors. Then they spent about the next 15 minutes talking about just Xbox availability on all screens. And the future is not locking your games to one thing. And this is not a new policy change for Xbox. They're always talking about playing all your games on all the screens and whatever. That's how Game Pass currently exists. The change here is that some of these games will go to rival platforms instead, where almost never, for any reason, do Nintendo or PlayStation games come to, each other or Xbox. It is true that these 4 games are not especially a big deal. Again, they are smaller games. And the community ones, you could see how they'd want to expand their player base. The other ones have been available on Xbox Game Pass for a while, so they want some sales out of those. But it's a weird path forward because it's okay, if your goal is to increase Game Pass subs, which I think they just announced, they hit 34 million, which is 9 million more than they announced 2 years ago. So growth is slowing. You're not getting more Game Pass subs from this because one of the points they made was that Game Pass would only be in the Xbox ecosystem. They're not putting Game Pass on other platforms. So you're not getting people to sign up for Game Pass, through PlayStation or Switch, which wouldn't really make any sense. But you're also giving people fewer reasons to buy an Xbox. Granted, these are older, smaller games, but that's the thing. It's you start with 4 games and it's not policy. And so now we kind of arrive at the case-by-case basis thing where, all Phil said was these 4 games are not Starfield and Indiana Jones. And The Verge had a big pre-brief thing in an interview with Phil where they asked him, okay, so Starfield and Indiana Jones aren't off the table. And he's like, well, his point was we should never say any game is, ever off the table to be locked into one platform, something like that. And so it's not even ruling those out. Who knows, what the stipulation is for how many years it might have to be until Starfield went on, PlayStation or whatever. But it's just this very strange situation now where it's case by case and we don't know the timeline. In the immediate vicinity, sure, I don't think anything really changes of significance. These 4 games are small enough to not be a big deal. But I think a lot of the biggest Xbox fans, even if it doesn't change things for them, this sort of rabid loyalty that they have for Xbox, I think is going to remain shaken a bit. And maybe that's a good thing because people should not be this loyal to individual consoles or giant mega corporations. But this was a truly bizarre way to present this. I don't. It was like 50 minutes of just essentially just nothing. Like 15 of the 22 minutes was nothing. The other was guessing at the four games, and then there were a couple of news items like some Activision new and old games are coming to Game Pass. The one they mentioned specifically is, Diablo 4 is coming to Game Pass. I'm not sure if the seasons are, or if it's just the base game. Nothing about next Call of Duty. We don't know if that's coming yet. And then they tease some sort of like the most powerful hardware we've ever done thing is coming. We don't know if that's like an upgrade for Series X or a new console generation. Supposedly it's pretty far off. I was reading like 2028, so that sounds like a new console generation. So the point being is they're not getting out of consoles. There was not an announced like handheld thing that some people thought they might announce if they're trying to do their play on every screen thing, and things like the Steam Deck are really taken off. But I don't know. It was a very strange, offering, and I think it's fine for now. But Xbox just is not really projecting strength here in this space, I would say, at all. And it's good, that they just didn't announce, I would say, Starfield or even like Halo Infinite multiplayer is going, because like those would have been a lot more like symbolic handovers of like, you're going to get Master Chief to PlayStation, you're going to get Starfield, you're like most hyped game of this generation and probably one of your biggest games of this generation. That's not happening now, but it does seem like the door is open for future things like this to happen. And the goal appears to just be, since you're not selling consoles, you're not increasing Game Pass subs, just raking in revenue, I guess sometimes for the individual developers, if they're smaller developers. I don't know how well, say Pentiment will sell on Switch, all this time later or whatever, or how many PlayStation players will be inspired to join Sea of Thieves after all these years. I guess there's no, I guess we'll time will tell, but I am curious to see how this evolves in the future and what happens when these budgets of these AAA games, just keep going up and up and up, and so all of a sudden maybe Game Pass isn't so profitable, and these day one launches have to be supported by also launching that game on other platforms simultaneously. We already know this is going to happen with Call of Duty. They promised, cross their heart and hope to die, that they would not, take away Call of Duty from PlayStation. It would be sold day and date with the same features. And well, that's something they had to say to, assuage antitrust concerns. Like, again, do they stop at Call of Duty? Like, is Indiana Jones such an expensive game that maybe in a couple of years they do launch it simultaneously on PlayStation? So machine games can rake in money, but also Game Pass subs are still, on board with their, keeping their subscription. It feels like that's where things are moving. And like whether that's ultimately good or bad, I don't know. It feels like Microsoft is like, okay, well, we don't care about consoles anymore. And they're like, well, okay, we're not super into, growing Game Pass because we know there's a ceiling. So we're just putting our games more places for just revenue from selling games, I guess. I'm not really sure how this plays into their stated strategies of, games on more screens. Because like they already have all the screens. You already have the TV with an Xbox console, you have PC, you have mobile. I don't think cloud streaming is where it needs to be widely adopted, but well, I guess Switch is its own screen, so that's technically a different screen than a TV, but you know what I mean. I don't know. I wrote an article today about like Xbox is struggling, but PlayStation is also struggling, and they have their own set of challenges, but Xbox just, they seem kind of aimless, and they spent this time talking about like the strategy they've already had about like Xbox everywhere. That's not new, but dipping their toe in non-exclusives, and then it's just really opening the door for like who knows in the future. Like no, they're not going full third party right now, but they are starting something that I don't really know where this goes in the future, and I don't imagine it will just be teeny tiny games a year later indefinitely. I don't really care. They can do whatever they want. This is more, I own both consoles, even though people, think I'm console warring one way or the other. This is just sort of a commentary on like a very weird presentation, and then a business decision that seems like it could be a little questionable going forward. But, I don't run the gaming division of a $3 trillion company, so what do I know? But this is, just as an outside observer, a lot of this strikes me as kind of weird. So anyway, thanks for watching. Did I make this shorter than the podcast? Yes, half the length. So there you go. I don't know if I'd watch it. It's very boring. There's a lot of buzzwords and corporate speak, and I don't know. I don't know if I'd bother. Just read news articles or watch this video. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.